Hello, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We are still very much on the way to 1,000 subscribers, so I would really appreciate that if you could hit that big red button and also turn on post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates, and so you don't miss another episode. So, we're going to start out today by talking about someone we've mentioned a lot so far this offseason, and especially throughout the Summer League because of his kind of lackluster showing, is Andre Jackson Jr. And while he's been one of the Bucks that I've been the most high on over the past couple of years, and I've just really desperately wanted to see grow, the conclusion of last season and his, again, disappointing summer league run really hampered things in terms of not necessarily his development, but if he's going to get any more future opportunities. And the signing of Amir Coffey from the Los Angeles Clippers as an unrestricted free agent, it's definitely going to complicate things for Andre Jackson Jr. And of course, we've talked in previous episodes and right after the signing was made about the competition that's going to ensue because Amir Coffey was signed to basically a training camp contract, and Andre Jackson Jr.'s contract isn't fully guaranteed until opening night, I believe. So there's going to be some competition for the Bucks, basically the Bucks' last roster spot. So it really puts Andre Jackson Jr. in a less favorable position. And also, unsuspectingly, a guy like Torian Prince is, I say unsuspectingly because you would think shooting 43% from three and being near the league lead in 3 point percentage would kind of take you out of conversations like this. But Amir Coffey is also going to be competing with the likes of Torian Prince as well as Andre Jackson Jr. for that last roster spot and for a lot of minutes at the small forward spot because the Bucks have been lacking wing depth for as long as I can remember at this point. But Fansided's Mark Nylon came out with an article basically talking about these new developments and the kinds of differences that Amir Coffey can bring to the team and also the competition that he's going to bring to the team by just being there. And he said, and I quote, "Despite the fact that the Bucks have had astoundingly shallow depth at the small forward position over the past few seasons, Jackson has failed to separate himself from teammates like Torian Prince and Chris Livingston. Based on his past few seasons out in Los Angeles, Coffey may already be coming in with a clear leg up on all three." And you could certainly say for both Chris Livingston and Andre Jackson Jr. that I would believe Amir Coffey is coming in with a leg up just because of how impressive he was for the Clippers this past season. Throughout the regular season, was just an amazing shooter, also just great from a set field goal percentage perspective, a great free throw shooter. He really just pulled out all the stops and was very impactful on both ends of the floor. So he definitely comes in with a little bit more of an advantage after coming off of a great season. Uh, and it's funny that a name like Chris Livingston being brought up in a conversation like this, it really goes to show that Jackson Jr. didn't really do much to separate himself at all from the rest of the guys in the Bucks wing room. Because if you're talking about, yeah, he's failed to separate himself from a guy like Chris Livingston, who wasn't, I'm going to say, wasn't supposed to be on this team going into this year because he was dropped. And then he was solely brought back because of his incredible summer league outing. So saying that he wasn't able to separate himself from a guy that the Bucks again had previously dropped and only brought back because he was great in the summer league, that really says a lot about how Andre Jackson Jr. is kind of disappointed over the past calendar year. So Amir Coffey is definitely going to come in with a leg up on both Torian Prince and Andre Jackson Jr. And it seems as though we're nearing a point where we can almost pencil in that Andre Jackson Jr. is going to be cut. I don't really want to say that. I don't want that to be the ultimate conclusion of the Amir Coffey Andre Jackson Jr. sweepstakes. But if if Amir Coffey is going to come in and play exceptionally well as their backup small forward or even starting small forward, then that's what you take. You don't want to continue with the Andre Jackson experiment at that point. Maybe you try and give him up for a couple of second round picks or some other kind of swap that makes sense with the direction that the Bucks are going in, because it seems to this point that it's going to get even harder and harder for Andre Jackson Jr. to really earn his spot in the Bucks rotation in 2025-26. And speaking of, for a guy, here's a guy that's not really going to have as hard of a time with finding himself a good spot in the rotation next season in Ryan Rollins. And Ryan Rollins is a guy that I've talked about ad nauseum because of how impressive he was on the defensive side of the ball specifically, and that he was an incredible 3 point shooter north of 40% this past year, and just all of his natural athletic gifts and his IQ and intangibles and everything about him, he really profiles as a player that's going to develop into at least a great role player for the Bucks and will have a chance to really contribute to winning in the next 3 years that he's on contract for, on a very cheap deal, by the way, which shout out to John Horst for that. But the Ringer's Danny Chow came out with an article basically saying that Ryan Rollins, for how much I've talked about him, uh, people still aren't really too high on the fact that Ryan Rollins is going to contribute at such a high level that he's really going to come in and make a huge difference. But Danny Chow has labeled Ryan Rollins as the Bucks wild card, and he said, and I quote, perhaps the most interesting or perhaps the most intriguing wild card on the roster is fourth-year breakout candidate Ryan Rollins, who earned the trust of Doc Rivers against all odds last season. Standing at 6'3" with an astounding 6'10" wingspan, Rollins will most likely impact the defense, but he flirted with a 50-40-80 season in his first year as an NBA rotation player. These are the margins the Bucks will have to grind in the lower rungs. And that's a very valuable point to make, that Ryan Rollins did all of that. Basically, that was his first real experience of getting actual minutes and actually being responsible for contributing to a team that was trying to make a playoff run and do all these things around Damian Lillard and around Giannis. That was really his shot to really contribute to winning. And I think he succeeded. I think he knocked it out of the park given the opportunity. And going into next year, he really is the Bucks breakout candidate. Of anybody in the lineup right now, I would say, even outside of Amir Coffey, Ryan Rollins, he's going to be the guy where if he has a surprisingly great year, he can potentially vault the Bucks. I won't say single-handedly, but he'll have a huge impact in vaulting the Bucks into a favorable playoff position, maybe even having the Bucks gain home court advantage for the playoffs if they get a top 4 seed. Or not for the playoffs, but you know what I mean, in that first round series. So that's I'm not going to say that's my expectation is for the Bucks to notch a top 4 seed, but I feel like it's very, very possible, especially in this conference. So Ryan Rollins will certainly have an impact on doing so if the Bucks were to get to that point. A lot of it would rest on his shoulders if he is the consistent backup point guard or even gets a lot of reps as the starter for most of the season. So looking for great things out of Ryan Rollins as always. So I know that these things are kind of, beat up, or we're beating a dead horse here. But of any Giannis Antetokounmpo mock trades that we're going to see for the rest of this summer or even going into this season, going towards the trade deadline, I feel as though only one team really, really makes sense for the Milwaukee Bucks to even have negotiations with. Of course, you can look to the San Antonio Spurs because of their war chest of good young players and assets, but I feel as though the Detroit Pistons, if they were to offer a good deal, consisting of their best young players and draft capital, I feel like that would make the most sense for a Milwaukee Bucks Giannis Antetokounmpo trade hypothetical. And Fantasy Sports on Sports Illustrated's Dave Holcomb basically came out with a story, a mock trade that has taken my opinions and basically completely put them into words in written format and thrown out onto the internet. It's like he was reading my mind. And he said, and I quote, Detroit can surrender a ready-made rebuild core with Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. It could flip Tobias Harris in a subsequent trade, and of course, the Pistons can offer a good haul of draft picks too. If Milwaukee moves Giannis, it should be for a deal that fires up a new era, and this one would do exactly that. The Detroit Pistons have the perfect arsenal of young players that would satisfy the Milwaukee Bucks in a potential Giannis trade. Not saying that a Giannis trade is ever going to happen or that it should, but if Giannis were to come to a point where he's just fed up and he requests a trade out of Milwaukee, Milwaukee should directly head to Detroit to put together a trade for Jaden Ivey, who was having his own breakout year this past year before he got hurt and missed the rest of the season. I believe he only played 30 games, but in those 30 games, he was north of 17 points a game, close to 50% from the field, over 40% from three. Jaden Ivey was having a breakout campaign, and I'm looking for big things from him next year. And of course, we know Asar Thompson's defensive potential and, already just the caliber of defensive player that he is and how insanely athletic he is, just like his twin brother Amen. And Jalen Duren has already proved to be one of the most solid young centers in the NBA, a walking double-double, and his body is just made like chiseled out of stone. Like this kid is going to be a sensational center option on a good team for years to come. And about Tobias Harris, yes, you can flip him for, maybe, who knows, maybe you can get a first round pick out of a very desperate team that's looking to add some sort of scoring punch to contend. Not saying that Tobias Harris is necessarily the most valuable player that you could flip in a trade of this nature. But that's probably what the Bucks would be looking to do. And just getting in return the trio of players that Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren are just as a concept, that would be arguably the Bucks' best return for a Giannis deal, plus a bunch of first round draft capital. In my opinion, that's the deal that the Bucks should take 10 out of 10 times because like Dave Holcomb says, it instantly triggers a rebuild, a good rebuild at that, and gets them off to a fantastic head start. And I'm a really, really, really big proponent of that kind of trade, that kind of package. And getting the Bucks off to the right foot if Giannis were to ever request a trade. Not saying that it will ever happen. So this last topic here today is something that I was a little bit confused by, but it was Brew Hoops Jack Traherne, and basically he questioned whether or not the Jrue Holiday trade was a success because he points to Jrue Holiday's lack of offensive production, especially in the playoffs, and he compares him a lot to that of Eric Bledsoe. And this is part of a series that he and I believe other guys at Brew Hoop were working on, where it was chronicling the Bucks' recent struggles with the point guard position, even if they were good on one end, that they were lacking on another, and just kind of detailing the Bucks' point guards' weaknesses throughout this recent period of Bucks basketball. And Jrue Holiday came up, so he says, Jack Traherne, the regular season was never Bledsoe's problem. The reason he was traded was because his shooting efficiency dropped precipitously in the playoffs. Well, guess what? Jrue Holiday's playoff efficiency ended up being just as bad. And he points to Jrue Holiday in the playoffs, his field goal percentage, 39.6%, 3-point percentage at 30%, 45% on twos, 75% at the free throw line. Put it all together, 46.9% true shooting percentage. While I will agree with you that that is absolutely horrendous, Jrue Holiday has been one of, if not the best perimeter defender in the NBA for the better part of the last decade. And even as he ages, there's not many other guys in the NBA that I would take other than Jrue Holiday as just this ultimate connective piece. And again, one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. There's not many more guys that I would take that, could fill a role of his nature. And I think this is the obvious conclusion to come to, but to question the trade as whether it's a success or not, even though everybody knows the Bucks won the championship in 2021, it's it's just a very interesting thing because I'm not. It's hard to be in a position to complain when you know that it ended with the highest of all honors and that they were able to raise the Larry O'Brien trophy, largely due to what Jrue Holiday did in the NBA finals against the Phoenix Suns, had a hand in some of the most legendary plays in Milwaukee Bucks history, of course, the Valley Oop, and, not even against the Suns, but just in that playoff run, and Jrue Holiday has just been an unbelievable defender that had a hand in sending the Bucks to the finals and getting them over the hump, even coming back from a 2-0 deficit. I believe, regardless of the kinds of stats that you can point to for Jrue Holiday's counted numbers, it's not about that, especially on the offensive end, and it never has been, even though he's shown to be an incredible two-way player throughout the course of his career. I care more about the defensive metrics, the defensive impact, because that's what he does. That's what he's relied upon most to do, and that's what he's done for his entire career. So we're not really in a position to complain because Jrue Holiday largely helped the Milwaukee Bucks get over the hump and win a championship and, probably keep Giannis around for an extra little while because if he doesn't win a championship and a finals MVP, where are we at right now? Maybe, who knows? Maybe he's already gone. But I'm confident that he would stick around even if, just to chase that championship because we know that there's nothing Giannis would want more than to win a championship in Milwaukee. And if he hadn't completed that goal in 2021, I'm sure that he would be doing that right now and he would still be on that pursuit. But, anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. Again, I've been Dean Simon. Please make sure to tell me what you think in the comments, and subscribe. Please hit that big red button below. I believe we're about to cross the 800 subscriber threshold, so that is amazing. Thank you to all of you out there that have watched and tuned in on a daily basis to hear more recent Bucks updates. And if you could turn on those post notifications so you don't miss another episode, I would greatly appreciate that. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one, and go Bucks.